Hello YouTube viewers, welcome to my channel Science to Technology. In today's show, Computer Wednesday, we're going to talk about Raspberry Pi Pico W. This is not a technical breakdown, this is more a holistic overview. I have provided technical details down below. So what we are talking about here, we are talking about microcontroller, and you have to understand one core aspect of microcontroller at this point in time. Back in my old days, it used to be a thing that products used to advertise like this air condition, microcontroller technology, washing machine, microcontroller technology. Right now we are using it more and more. Heck, we are starting to put this puppy in goddamn light bulbs. So reality is we are using it exponentially more, and everything sooner or later will end up with microcontroller. So learning and using it is a must for students, and I mean students mostly for almost any student that's dealing with science, dealing with basically so electronics, electricity also, because smart meters are becoming a real world thing. So it is something that a student especially wants to go into engineering and wants to deal with things have to do. It's not optional anymore, it is compulsory. And Arduino is the king of this world. Now how the heck that happened? Simply because Arduino was very smart. They put their lot of effort into actually making a microcontroller, releasing it to the public, because be mindful, microcontroller was always there, but it was always proprietary, hidden behind lock and key code of sort of scenario, proprietary hoo-ha. But Arduino was like everything was open source. They actually made it, actually sold it to universities, schools, kits, everything. They build a SDK for it. That's how they slowly over time they started to build a community. Once those community started to grow, more and more people started to use the microcontroller. More and more grew, exponentially self-fulfilling its own prophecy. So Arduino became the king of the hill. Now Raspberry Pi did the similar thing for single board computer space. There are many companies that try to take it over Raspberry Pi, including Asus, but reality is nothing even comes close. And in terms of microcontroller, you have to understand microcontrollers, there are many microcontrollers, but at this point in time more and more people are just using Arduino, and all the other microcontrollers, they are only used by giant companies who are they already have a whole labs full of people who are dealing with this stuff. So reality is microcontroller is something important here, real, and you must know how to deal with it if you are dealing with electricity or electronics. So it is compulsory. So what about Raspberry Pi Pico? Well, you have to understand this puppy was launched in January 2021. Again, it took its sweet time to getting here simply because peak of chip shortage. Now, thankfully, this somehow got spared from chip shortage because either Raspberry Pi Foundation overestimated how many people gonna buy it, or scalpers did not directly dive into it, or just they lucked out. It was surprisingly well compared to everything else, compared to RTX 3000 series. It was surprisingly unscathed, so to say, and it's a very good low cost starter microcontroller. It's not a microcontroller that's gonna drive your self-driving car. No, it's not for that. But if you can you build an air conditioner with it? Absolutely. Can you build a charge controller with it? Absolutely. You can do washing machines, stabilizers, lot of things you can do with it. And it's directly aimed for beginners and hobbyists. What does that mean? That simply means this inherently is not designed to be the most powerful ever. It's designed to be good enough to get your feet wet into it. And the whole idea behind this is there are microcontroller, but you have to understand the Arduino microcontroller environment is built for people who are more familiar with programming. It is far more uninviting to people who don't know anything, because the moment you go into microcontroller forums and try to understand it, every time answer would be similar to, why don't you know this? It's like, dude, I'm just starting, I don't know this. And this is one good thing about Raspberry Pi. They have learned a lot in terms of documentation, how the heck you make it child friendly, meaning I give it a kid who does not know anything about this and they can still learn it. And that is it's almost like how Linux is not becoming a mainstream thing, simply because every time you have a problem, the answers are always like, why don't you know this, or how can you be so stupid, or it's use this distribution or that. That's why it's not growing. Same thing is not happening with here, simply because Raspberry Pi already has a community. They know that if you have good enough community, if you apply enough elbow grease, you can make it work. And they went so far, they actually built their own chip, Ep192. This is their own chip. Again, be mindful, the microcontroller design, the core architecture is taken from ARM Holdings, meaning it's licensed exactly like how Samsung builds Exynos, but it is house in-home built, and it's surprisingly powerful. So it can do surprisingly large amount of things. It's even suited for mass production. And in terms of user friendliness, it has MicroPython, which is far more familiar to newbies. It's not something you have to know 10 layers of PhD in order to use it properly. It's it's far more inviting. And community is there to actually there is a whole freaking books for it where you can start from basic. I mean, why are you putting this comma here? What does this statement mean? To going to a point where you can build products with this puppy. So it is really good, and the sole reason why it's even a good competition is because of backing of the Pi Foundation. So what about this Raspberry Pi Pico W? Well, it's the same thing, Control C, Control V, exact same thing, exact same board also with minor alterations. And the idea is they added a basically a package that deals with wireless technology. Now, wireless technology is something that is becoming more and more common. I'm saying like light bulbs have it. At this point in time, there is a very good chance you may are watching this video with a mobile phone that may be connected to some light bulb somewhere. So reality, wireless is becoming that everybody wants to have it. So a package was like always there in the market where some people was adding this puppy to a daughter board where they had Bluetooth or something like that. So Raspberry Pi is like, what if we add it? Now this is a different SKU. This is not an upgrade. It is a different SKU. Meaning if you don't need it for some scenario, you don't need it. Let's say you don't want your stable voltage stabilizer to actually have wireless controller. Good enough. Use the old one. It's still an independent SKU. You want wireless technology? Buy this puppy. And almost no other changes has been done, meaning you can just plonk this puppy, put it in the place of old one, and almost everything should work without any issue whatsoever. That's the whole point. And price went up a little bit. It went up from $4 to $6. Now in India that translates to around 600 rupees. I have looked at around many websites. Now again they are saying it will deliver in November or December of this year, but the price was like around 500 rupees to 550 rupees. So not too expensive. And same footprint, same code compatibility. That makes it, if you have already experienced with this controller last year, you will be good enough. You will be in good hands. However, there are two decisions that really frustrate people. Is that if you look at the provider of this package, it's like who's making the package. Package is Bluetooth, and it's surprisingly high-end Bluetooth. It's Bluetooth 5.0, not 2.0, 4.0. It's like 5.2. So it's like, why the heck Bluetooth is not there? Apparently, again, this is not very clear. Apparently, there are like limited number of pins in the microcontroller, so they did not have like full linkage to the basically controller. So the Bluetooth requires an independent system. However, there is a quote-unquote mode. Again, that's not supposed to be for like Wi-Fi data transfer. This is supposed to be for sensors, so it does not need high bandwidth, but it should, in principle, have the ability to utilize Bluetooth, not to its full extent, but should be enough where you can like actually transmit data without any hassle. Again, not for audio transmission. That requires like multiple parallel lines. It does not have enough pin. The microcontroller does not have enough pin for that, but it should have the ability to communicate direct basic things like debugging commands or like basic rudimentary communication should be possible. It's not, and it's limited in the code. That is odd. Like for every people, it's like, dude, you have the code, like actual hardware is there. And again, it will not be like latest and greatest in Bluetooth, but it will be there. And for many people, Bluetooth is far more desirable because it's far lower energy compared to Wi-Fi. And it's a low energy device. Why would you want to increase its power consumption for no reason, especially for battery powered equipments? So it's odd. And still not using USB-C. And at this point in time, this sort of company is becoming the reason why we do not have USB-C adoption everywhere. They are actively, it's like, it's a bit more expensive. Dude, you are creating e-waste by not choosing it. Like flat out, at this point in time, it's a decision. I get Mark 1 was like, they are just starting out. And again, many Arduinos also have that same issue. But when you saw like how quickly it's selling out and like, is you do not have to worry about moving the inventories, why the hell you still using this? Simply because if you want to utilize this puppy in mass production item, you have to create an independent port. For example, let's say this is any sort of device where you have power controller, where you want to plug in a charger, you have to use a USB-C charger because more and more mobile phones have USB-C. So it will be a difficult thing for you to have somehow like those, and people are like, oh, you can desolder it. Again, that should not be my requirement. It's like, bro, take $1 from extra from me and just have USB-C as a default, like how Sparky did that. Like this is a same controller, same microcontroller in a micro kind of format, and you have USB-C in it. So if you want to make any sort of human interface device, you can just buy this. This is like genuinely weird garbage. It's like, dude, just let go of goddamn micro P. Like, do not perpetuate e-waste in this world because you're just like, I want to be extra cheap. It's like, no, just add $1 more and I guarantee you everybody would have bought. Heck, even if they pushed it to $10, people will actually buy it just for USB-C. Nobody wants to deal with in a world where it's like everything is becoming USB-C and then you're like, for this I have to buy micro B or mini P. So this is genuinely frustrating that first of all, the Bluetooth is not being implemented in the code and USB-C not being there. That's like really odd for Mark 2 variant. Like people accept many things in Mark 1, but in Mark 2 we're like, come on, you gotta do better than this. So this is kind of frustrating, but everything else is good. So what about competition? Well, you have to understand, Making a product is child's play. For example, Raspberry Pi, can there any company that can make it? Yeah, Asus made it, but here's the deal, supporting is the hard part. Meaning the whole reason Raspberry Pi is almost becoming a competent computer is not because Raspberry Pi Foundation, it's simply because there's so many people working their ass off to refining the software to such extent where a whole operating system which has everything taken care of, from video playback to video compression to goddamn video editing software suites are also coded for it. Everything is there because of support. Now that support is a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more support company adds, the more people fine tune it, more polish it, the more easy to use it becomes, more people buy it. It's a self-fulfilling loop. So there have been many competitors for Raspberry Pi and Arduino, but almost all of them failed to reach any good level of market penetration. And that was a primary reason for that. They flat out did not have good support for it. And Pi can even try to go into microcontrollers because of their community. Without that community, it's nothing. And the biggest direct target hit is ESP32. Now ESP32 is very popular at this point in time, but be mindful, it's not beginner friendly. It's like one of those tools where it's like, if you are using this, you should know this. So it's very overwhelming basically. If you are not very familiar with the microcontrollers and all that jazz, it's like, what the hell is this? Again, it's a good tool. Under no circumstances this is a bad tool. This is a good tool, actually far more powerful than that system, Raspberry Pi system. But it's still like, you have to have PhD in order to use it. That's the core reason why Raspberry Pi can even try to compete with this and actually expect to win. That's the same reason, because of that foundation. So this is very good for us. So what we can expect in the future? Well, reality is more competition is good for public. That's direct absolute truth. We want more and more competition. And then you have to understand, knowledgeable people makes wiser public. At this point in time, if you have ever heard of the statement like, sheeple kind of people. Well, why is that said? Well, there was an actual, not joking, real world case on Apple for against right to repair, and Apple actually had someone paid to say this, that by soldering a goddamn wire, like you have traces in motherboard, sometimes due to corrosions those traces break, you add a copper wire, enamel wire specifically on top of it, so it works. They're like, doing that makes it a Windows device. How the heck this happened in court? This happened in goddamn court. How the heck that happened? Because of dumb public. Now be mindful, not every Apple users are that dumb, but Apple wants you to become that dumb, and they are working their ass off, and I'm sorry to say, but they are actually succeeding. That's how, like, they are like, oh, if somebody opens your screen, it compromises the security. No, that's not how security works. Flat out, that's not how security works. There is a reason why entirety of server infrastructure, including military systems, running on Linux, which is a goddamn open source system. How do you think they are secure? They are, you are $2 trillion. Fun fact, banking system is $16 trillion. How the heck they are relying on their servers? Linux, open source, because you can look into it, you can figure out where are the bugs, you can figure out where is the backdoor into this, you can lock it up, you can isolate it, you can refine it. So that's the whole point we want. As a public, we want more knowledgeable people, which makes our public to be more knowledgeable. So a company cannot troll you. It's like, oh, we do not allow you to do this simply because it will go boom. Like this, I'm not joking. This straight face, actually, our car dealer, we just bought a car like around 2 years ago, and he was actually convinced my father to add seat covers on it. Now again, that's not needed because we rarely drive that car. So like, I knew for a fact that it's only going to be used once in a while, so that we don't need seat covers, expensive seat covers, because it will prevent static. I'm like, no, it won't do anything. It's the same thing. It won't do anything, and it will protect car from going boom. Do you understand what he was trying? It's like saying, like, unless you have this condom on top of the car, as in like car seats, it can go boom. I'm like, are you serious? That's the whole point. We want knowledgeable people, and that only leads to wiser public. Otherwise, we'll have a scenario where people will trick you, people will troll you, companies will sell you garbage because you do not know any better. We do not want that. And better documentation for tech. The more you understand things, the more you actually go down into nitty-gritty of it. You don't need to be like tech whiz where you can understand all this MOSFETs and relays and all that. You don't need to be that, but you need to be enough where it's like, this is the microcontroller, that's the relay, at least that. And that will help you a lot in life, real world life, specifically if you're dealing with any sort of complicated equipment. And it's something we all must strive towards. We cannot be like, dumb people, black magic, we do not know. Like, that's the whole point of Black Mirror. It's like people, so distance themselves from technology that they become slave to it without realizing it. Because you have to understand, at the end of the day, algorithm is just an algorithm. At the end of the day, microcontroller is not black magic, it's a black IC. So that's why. And for students, I must urge you, if you are a student, you are working into this field, work your ass off on this sort of microcontroller. Again, it does not have to be this, but again, documentation will help you to succeed properly. You can go into this, but you have to. There are a lot of kits, and these are very child friendly kits, and that's the another amazing aspect. You can get a like a basic class 4 or class 5 student, and they give them kits, and they will do amazing thing. And next time when they will grow up, company will like, oh, you soldered a copper wire, so that becomes a Mac to Apple, Mac will become a Windows. You're like, bitch, please. That's what we want. This is a very good future that we are moving towards, and we have to support it. So this was my presentation on Raspberry Pi Pico W. Hopefully you have liked it, learned from it. In that case, please click the like button, share it amongst your friends. That will help me a lot. If you didn't like it, didn't enjoy it, I urge you to press dislike. Press it twice to show me extra disappointment. Please leave a comment because I do try to reply to all of them. Subscribe, press the bell icon if you're free, and as always, thanks for watching.